Hello. Today we're going to be going over three wonderful things about the Gilded Age, including the New South, the conditions for farmers, and conditions for workers. When I say wonderful, I mean absolute shit. So let's get this shit show started. So, you may remember this guy named Henry Grady, editor of the Atlanta Constitution, coming up north going like, guys, we got a New South, it's cool now, there's no slavery, we got railroads, we got economy, it's all fucking good, it's fine. But it kind of was, you know, he's right, there's railroads, and there's definitely better economic opportunity, let's say. You know, more opportunities for trade, more crops are being grown, stuff like turpentine camps and sawmills are popping up, tobacco is starting to be grown, and heck, there's even this thing called Coca-Cola that's coming up. You know, might become a popular drink or something, I don't know. Who knows? But there's still some kind of shitty things, like the Lost Cause and the celebration of it. Because we were like, oh man, remember the good old days when we didn't have fucking railroads and we had slavery and, you know, back then life was good. And so there's this whole literature field, school of literature, popping up about the Lost Cause. Because, you know, how the South lost, and they're like, it was still good, I don't give a fuck. It's better than you, bitch. So, you know, you got crazy stuff like Uncle Remus and a were-rabbit. I don't know. Pretty crazy. But yeah. Because people are like, those were the good old days. And all the blacks are like, what the fuck are you saying? All the whites being like, those were the good old days. We need to go back to it, but we can't. But like, I'm gonna feel nostalgic, you know. It's like it's like Super Mario Brothers. It's good old. It's the good oldie. And then, you know, everybody else is like, okay, I'm just gonna leave you over there to do that. Religion also is the thing in the South, with churches with like about the same amount of people attend church in the South, but religious imagery was a lot more prevalent in everything, right? There's a lot more Jesus Christ, okay? And also, obviously, like the Southerners were starting to make their own churches too. That was the thing. And basically became a place for Southern blacks to, you know, get together and be safe and, you know, gather around in a community and be chill and all that stuff. Anyways. Oh yeah, the segregated South. It started kind of with the railroads. Or rather, it started with everything, let's be honest. Ooh. Almost tipped over that jar. Anyways. You know, separate but equal was a thing before, you know, separate but equal was a thing. As in, like, already before the ruling hammer came down, you already had segregated train cars, segregated theaters, segregated actually everything. So, and eventually, after Reconstruction was ended by, you know, white legislators coming back into power and stuff, the South went like, we need to find a way to make sure that no black person ever gets political power ever again. And then some were like, yo, what if we made voting laws and built them into our Constitution? And they're like, explain. So they basically instituted things that were supposedly reasonable, which included a literacy test and people who were convicted of crimes such as arson, bigamy, grand theft, auto, and other crimes that black people were normally accused of and then convicted of. And then also just random limitations like, yo, you have to have lived in the state and then the election district for at least a year, and then we've got a poll tax here that you've got to pay if you want to vote. So, kind of sucks, bitch. So, all these things basically denied black people the right to vote. Kind of sucks. So now we've basically transitioned from Ku Klux Klan terrorizing people into not voting. They've just made it straight up illegal for black people to vote. So yeah. Although there was still violence in the form of public lynchings, if you missed that at all. Why not? Anyways. In response, the African Americans were kind of divided. We're gonna have a quick digression. There's this person named Ida B. Wells. She was really effective at speaking out against lynching. Now back to your general shit. Such as Booker T. Washington, who was going like, yo, we just gotta deal with the fact that they literally stacked the cards against us and made basically everything we want to do illegal and try to do something with it, While W.E.B. Du Bois goes like, no, we gotta fight. Starts up the Niagara movement and shit. Goes out and goes like, yeah, we gotta fight for our rights to party. We gotta fight for our rights to vote, man. Alright? We gotta do this shit. It's gonna be good. And he eventually creates the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, known to you today as the NAACP. Haha. Coolio. Now then. Let's move on to them farmers I was talking about earlier, shall we? Yeah. So, basically, while the industries are popping up in the north and in other places, and railroads are starting to control trade, farmers are realizing, hey, that motherfucker Rockefeller is getting lower prices on his fucking railroad cars, and I gotta pay a higher price? And now I'm broke because I had to run into debt from all these banks taking my money with all these loans and interest and things, and you know what? I don't think this is a fair system. And so they started thinking, if we organize and become big groups like them, then we'll get the good prices. And so the first earliest farmers organization was the Patrons of Husbandry, more commonly known as the Grange, who basically tried to fight against the chronic debt and all the corporations and banks going like, ha, I don't give a fuck about you. You're gonna be broke all this time. And so they basically got together and organized and did some things. Cooperative buying and selling? I don't know. And then they banded together to get better rates from the railroads. And it was pretty cool. Other organizations started, like the Agricultural Wheel and the Farmers Alliance. I mean, why not? And the Farmers Alliance became basically the bigger one. It was the latest iteration of farmers groups coming together to make life easier. They basically became a large business. They weren't opposed to monopolies. They were opposed to everyone else being a monopoly, but they weren't. So they tried to become a monopoly by basically getting as many farmers as they could, many organizations into them to try to bargain for, better prices and things. Although they excluded black people, so they made the Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Union, which had more people, but had less power, because black people in late 1800s, which kind of sucked. But while the guy who started the Farmers Alliance, by the name of Charles W. McCoon, wanted to avoid political involvement, other leaders wanted to, such as President Marion Cannon. That sounds like a badass. Marion Cannon. Man, that's a cool name. Anyways, who promoted things such as the sub-treasury system, which would grant farmers loans and protect their and protect their investments with like stable crops like cotton and wheat and other things. Although since literally a bunch of the Democrats were against it, and so were all of the Republicans, that never really got off the ground, which kind of sucked. Eventually, though, people were like, yo, we gotta get some political involvement up in this shit if we want to get something done, which led to them all getting together and making the People's Party, otherwise known as the Populist Party. And actually, I've skipped something. So, another reason why farmers are doing so difficult, or doing so... Damn, I can't talk today. Another reason why economic situations are so difficult for farmers is because of the lack of money around. See, more money equals more inflation, but also it makes it easier to pay off debt because there's more money to pay it off with. But when you have less money, well, there's less money to go around, you can't really pay off shit, you're in a pretty crappy situation. And so bankers and other things had kind of made the money supply very low by saying, hey, we gotta stick to a gold standard. No greenbacks or any of that shit. And the farmer's like, no, why? Not even a silver backing. They're like, no, go fuck yourself. So, basically, the Populist Party came together and went like, yo, we gotta get a silver standard, guys. And so, populists are starting to be elected, they're starting to become popular, and they're starting to threaten the Democratic and Republican elections. And the Democrats and Republicans are like, ah, shit, dude, what the fuck do we do? And then this guy from the Democrat Party named William Jennings Bryan goes like, yo, I agree with the populists, but I'm a Democrat. But yo, we should get a silver standard, which kind of caused a split in the Democrat and the Populist Party. With the Populist Party going like, so do we vote for our guy, or do we just go with the Democrats and vote for him, because he has like all of our plans? But eventually, the Republican William McKinley won anyway, which basically disintegrated the Populist Party. Because they got all divided about the fact that some of them split, some of them didn't, and eventually they lost anyway, which kind of sucked. But they did get the silver standard at one point. That was pretty cool. And although the Populist Party was an organization of farmers never before seen, it wouldn't really happen again. Kind of sucks. But anyways, now on to the industrial workers. The Great Railroad Strike of 1877. Bunch of railroad workers being like, what the fuck? I'm broke as shit, and you keep on cutting my wages. And so they had a strike. And then President Rutherford B. Hayes went like, yeah, nah, dude, nah. And he sends the army after them. So, there went that strike. And then states were like, yo, we can't have this shit happening. We gotta make a National Guard. So they made a National Guard. And they made armies all over the place for the National Guard. Heck, you could probably go visit an army somewhere in Texas today. I don't know these things. But the strikes also inspired the rise of labor unions. First off, the Knights of Labor, founded by a bunch of tailors, led by a guy named Terrence V. Powderly. They basically were like, we want that 8-hour work day, dude, come on. And while they wanted to do peaceful negotiations, they ended up doing strikes, and then eventually this split between the members of the Knights of Labor that went like, fuck it, let's just strike all the time. And then the people were like, no, let's negotiate. Split it apart. So yeah. And while the Knights of Labor went like, we want to get all the workers together, the American Federation of Labor went like, let's just have all the craft unions together and have like all the specialized workers. And, we can get stuff better done here. And so, basically, led by Samuel Gompers from the Cigars Maker Union, they basically tried to negotiate specifically for short-term benefits. Slightly bigger wages, job security, 8-hour workday, on and on and on. And so, he was like, you know what? We don't need to think about the long term. If we can just get short-term changes again and again. So that was the thing. Oh yeah, the Haymarket strike. Because at some point in Chicago, socialists, anarchists, the American Federation of Labor Workers, they're like, fuck it, we're gonna organize. And so they all organized at the Haymarket Square, and they had a rally. But then at some point, somebody threw a bomb at the police. So then all the socialists and anarchists and labor unions got a bad rap. Feels bad. They even hanged or executed the leaders of the rally, even though they weren't connected to the bomb in any way. Oh well. And there was also the Homestead Strike of 1892, where a bunch of people working at Carnegie's plant, but the Carnegie Steel plant, which was actually run by a guy named Frick at the time. Frick. That language is not allowed in my Christian Discord server. But all the union workers were like, yo, we're gonna go on strike, we're gonna get better wages. And Frick went like, no thank you, you're fired. And then hired non-union workers and built an 8-foot fence around the plant and hired Pinkerton detectives. So it eventually resulted in a Pinkerton v. Worker firefight, which didn't really end too well. And so, but in the end though, Frick won, and the plant was reopened with non-union workers. Sucks. Anyway, next up, there's Coxey's army. Because this guy named Jacob Coxey went like, yeah, if we just all march to Washington, we could totally get them to bow down to our demands. So he just marched to Washington and got a lot of people along the way to march with Washington with him to say, yo, why don't you just pay us money to build roads and we can have jobs, damn it. It didn't work out, though. Because, Congress was controlled by corporate interests, like it is today, and like it has been for, probably the last, 200 years. But anyway, moving on. There's an American Railway Union that was, your general union. It did negotiation, it did strikes, but one time it fucked up when it supported the Pullman strike of 1894. Because this guy named Pullman had a car company, you see, and he made rail cars that were super fancy, super deluxe. And he made a town for his workers so that they could live and be fine. And one day he went like, oh shit, there's a depression. I'm just gonna cut all their wages, but I'm gonna keep the rent at the exact same price. And then the families were like, do you even math, bro? Do you know the way? Do you know the way? Spit on the notably. And they're like, yo, okay, it's time to strike. Hey, American Railway Union, where the fuck are you? And the American Railway Union's listening to this and they're like, I don't really want to start this fight, but we kind of have to. We're the American Railway Union, duh, no shit. And so they stopped all trains that had a Pullman car on it, and the Pullman workers went on strike. But they kept the mail trains running so that the federal government didn't have an excuse to intervene. But it turns out the federal government doesn't need an excuse to intervene. And they intervened. And it, went terribly. And eventually the guy who led the American Railway Union, who got arrested and went to jail, came out of jail saying, guys, we need to start a socialist party. And someone's like, wait, smoke weed every day? No, workers, damn it. So that was the thing. Miners also had, their own thing. Miners also had their own unions because, mining's fucking dangerous. And so the United Mine Workers of America popped up as the Miners Union. And they also got together all the peoples into a nice little union, whites and blacks all together. And so it didn't have the problems of other unions that failed before them because they accepted everybody. It was all good. Black, white, doesn't matter. You can march together so we can all get more money. It works out. And although the UMWA actually did a lot of good work in the North, in the West, miners weren't really able to do anything. So, it sucks. Oh yeah, there's this thing called the Industrial Workers of the World, which was basically a socialist labor union, supported by the Socialist Party, that Eugene V. Debs guy who started the Socialist Party. I might have forgotten to mention that, I'm sorry. Okay, anything else? Yes, 3 more things. Alright. At one point, the garment industry, made up mostly of women, went like, hey, we're broke as shit too, let's strike! Aha! And so they started a strike. And they were supported by the American Federation of Union, West Federation of Miners, all sorts of people. And they're like, yo, we know we've been striking before, and you just kind of beat us up. We're going to do it again, and this time we're getting what we want, damn it. And so, eventually, it was a super long strike, but eventually it ended when the union and the factory owners went like, okay, fine, we'll negotiate something. So that was a cool thing. And then a month after the strike ended, a fire started in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory that fucking burned half the people working there, and then everybody else fell to the ground from the 8th to 9th floor window, 8th to 9th floor windows, which led to, a bunch of new regulations and important reforms. So yeah, that's pretty terrifying. Oh yeah. And there's also this strike in Lawrence, which was kind of the original mill company place, where they were like, hey, you're all forced to have a shorter workday, so we're gonna cut your wages. And they were like, how about no? And then they got support from the Wobblies, otherwise known as the Industrial Workers of the World, and it actually worked. Cause, And then since some of the people were walking around with signs saying we want bread and roses too, it was called the Bread and Roses Strike. Why not? And finally today, we have the Ludlow, Colorado massacre, where a bunch of strikers striked for 14 months. These were coal miners. They striked for 14 months, and a bunch of them got killed by some militia troops. And it basically became, you kind of martyr thing. They're like, yo, what the fuck? Why are you killing these coal miners? And the Rockefellers who own the coal mines were like, fuck, shit, we look bad. And so, at some point, they ended the strike because, this is going terribly. But, yeah, didn't really do much. So, yeah, good old summary of all sorts of people trying to achieve justice while getting basically fucking nothing in the Gilded Age. Have a nice day.